Says here, rise and fall of three Chicago kingpins. Saul Rodriguez far left and the twins Pedro and Margarita Flores took different routes to the top and bottom of the city's drug world. Saul Rodriguez and the Flores twins took different routes to the top and bottom of the Chicago drug trade. To Pedro Flores, the two men who pulled him over had looked like cops. But moments later, face down in the back of the windowless van, his hands and feet zip-tied, Flores realized he'd been duped. At 22, he had been quietly working with his twin brother Margarito to create the most successful drug-dealing partnership in Chicago's history. Now hog-tied, his diamond-studded cell phone out of reach, Flores was powerless. All he could do was whisper a prayer. Don't worry, one of his captors told him, once we get the money, we're going to cut you loose. The Flores twins will come to believe a man they thought was their friend, Saul Rodriguez, was behind the kidnapping. They had known Rodriguez for a few years, and at the time of the kidnapping, as Pedro Flores rode to his uncertain fate, they had plans to go with Rodriguez to Las Vegas to see a welterweight title match. Rodriguez arranged the tickets. The twins and Rodriguez were all big-time drug dealers, but the similarities ended there. While the twins were loath to resort to violence, Rodriguez reveled in it. According to the Sun-Times, review of court records and interviews with law enforcement and underworld figures. At the time of the kidnapping in September 2003, might have seemed like Rodriguez's knockout blow to the twins. But 11 years after Pedro Flores was snatched from an alley behind his family's Southwest Side home, he and his brother appeared to have been playing a longer, smarter game, rope-a-dope style. On Friday, when Rodriguez faces sentencing in Chicago for a career of killings, remember that's the sentencing where he cried like a baby, home invasion and drug trafficking, a federal judge will pass final judgment on the twins and Rodriguez's contrasting roots to the top of Chicago's underworld. Rodriguez grew up on the south side where he ran with a street gang called La Raza. By the time Pedro Flores was kidnapped, Rodriguez had organized several kidnappings and personally participated in the abduction, torture, and murder of another drug dealer. If he wasn't ripping off his rivals, he was setting them up. He had a sweet deal with the cops. Rodriguez not only sold his own large amounts of heroin and cocaine when he tipped the Chicago police off to his rival's stashes. Flores twins started out as customers of Rodriguez, purchasing 15 to 20 kilos at a time, but through their father, they had a link directly to Mexican cartels. Soon the amounts of marijuana, cocaine, and heroin they would be moving would dwarf anything Rodriguez had ever seen. He also got paid for every kilo the cops recovered. We saw the receipts. In the 4 years leading up to 2000, Rodriguez netted $800,000 in fees for his police tips, a figure that likely made him the department's highest paid employee. His handlers, narcotics officer Glen Lewellyn, became his partner in crime, tipping him off about police operations and using his badge to carry out kidnappings at Rodriguez's behest. But he was rehabilitated, according to Joan Gottschall. Pendeja. Emboldened by the police protection, Rodriguez became a boxing promoter and branched into real estate, building a strip of townhomes in the Brighton Park neighborhood and investing in a Nevada golf course development. Bruh. But he took wild risks. A notorious womanizer, he slept with his flunkies, wives, and regularly partied in Vegas. See, that's the type of dirtbag. It's okay for him to creep on your girl. It's not okay for you to creep on his girl. He slept with his flunkies' wives and regularly partied in Vegas, where he laundered money and had all the perks of a high roller. Nobody around him was safe. He had his best friend killed, even a pal whom he'd once helped escape from a Mexican prison, then set up in the drug business, became a target. Extravagance and restraint. If experience had taught Rodriguez that violence and double-crossing provided big rewards, it taught the Flores twins something else. From a young age, they were groomed for a life amid drug world royalty. When they were just 8, the twins rode with their father as he drove from Mexico to Chicago in a vehicle packed with marijuana. Their dad went to prison and their older brother Armando took over the family business. Then he got in trouble with the law too, so the twins learned the value of discretion. They started out as customers of Rodriguez, purchasing 15 to 20 kilos at a time, but through their father, they had a link directly to Mexico's cartels. Soon the amounts of marijuana, cocaine, and heroin they'd be moving would dwarf anything Rodriguez had ever seen. Before they turned 25, they controlled the Sinaloa cartel's distribution network across the Midwest and into Canada, moving an estimated $1.8 billion in drugs through Chicago. With the near monopoly of the Chicago's drug supply came riches and toys, custom chopper motorcycles, Lexuses, and Bentleys in their own real estate empire. With the typical drug dealer extravagance, though, came some uncommon restraint. Where lesser dealers might have settled unpaid debts with bullets, the Flores twins simply cut bad debtors off to avoid police attention. Which is such an anomaly, because mind you, it is the thing that makes sense, right? It makes sense that you can't just be hot and having bodies everywhere, right? I just expect a body or two because that's the nature of the game, but it's an anomaly in itself, you know? They did not cut off fingers to teach people about pain, said a source intimately familiar with the brothers' methods. But that restraint would turn into a reputation for weakness that Rodriguez would exploit. I know people who were terrified of Rodriguez. His reputation was a no-nonsense, trigger-happy kind of dude, said attorney Joseph the Shark Lopez, who has represented dozens of players in Chicago's drug world. The Flores brothers were just drug dealers, gentlemen drug dealers. They were afraid of him. The Wrecking Crew. Rodriguez met with the twins in the early 2000s at Hoops, a basketball gym in the near west side. After 3 years of friendship, he was ready to pounce. He assembled the crew out of Central Casting. In addition to the crooked cop Lewellyn, there was a suburban mom whose day job was driving an ambulance, but who also acted as a drug courier and once arranged the kidnapping of her own grandmother. So not only was he the super dirtbag, right? Not only was he a super dirtbag, but he was able to find all the super dirtbags that were able to kidnap their own grandmothers. She cashed in on the kidnapping twice. After family members paid the ransom, the woman comforted her unwitting grandmother, telling her grandmother that she paid the ransom herself and would need to be repaid. She pulled the same scam that pinche Saul was doing. Just dirty people. And them the type of dirty motherfuckers that be mad at me for calling them dirty. Like, fuck you. You know what I'm saying? You got a lot of high horse to sit on to be mad at me telling you to go fuck yourself. You just a dirty, filthy pig, rat, fucking worm, snake hybrid. Rodriguez's muscle came from the Wrecking Crew, 3 oversized brothers named Manny, Hector, and Jorge Uriarte. Rounding up the bunch was Perez Umar, a heavy-set thug who hosted the crew at his Al Capone-themed wedding. The crew had been watching the twins' daily routine for some time when, in the summer of 2003, one of the twins' associates tipped Rodriguez about their movements. Another dirtbag in the camp. The plan was for Umar and Lewellyn to disguise themselves as undercover cops riding in a green Ford Crown Vic they had tricked out with lights and sirens. It worked perfectly. When Pedro pulled up to the 3-flat where he lived with his brother near Archer and Keeler, he spotted the fake cop car, did a U-turn, and parked in an alley. Moments later, after Pedro's brother and a pal left on motorcycles, Lewellyn and Umar pulled up in the Crown Vic, frisked Pedro, and tossed him in the panel van, which headed to a home in West Suburban Burbank, owned by one of the crew members. At the home, the crew tied the blindfolded Pedro to a chair in a basement and kept him there for 24 hours. A pet parrot, trained by the kidnappers, kept him company. Fuck you, the parrot squawked. Rodriguez came by but was discreet, since he feared Pedro Flores could identify him. He left the negotiations to his crew, who reassured Flores he'd be okay if his brother came through with the ransom. 100 keys of cocaine worth at least $1.5 million. At first, Margarito Flores did not come through. Threatened with the murder of his twin, Margarito showed cold-blooded detachment by trying to cheat the kidnappers with a load of weak cocaine. Only after a furious Pedro Flores called his brother, reminding him his life was on the line, did Margarito make good on the ransom, and Pedro was freed. You know, we dealt with that too. Like, I felt like that too. Like, Jay, you playing right now. You know what I'm saying? This ain't time to be playing. Just a couple of months later, the twins traveled to Las Vegas to see Oscar De La Hoya fight Sugar Shane Mosley at the MGM Grand. Rodriguez had arranged for their tickets and hotel. A couple months later, so this is after the fact. So that means if we're believing what Surviving El Chapo tells us, that means they went to this fight already knowing that it was him. and didn't let the cat out the bag, and you let him book rooms for you? Though the twins suspected Rodriguez, they said nothing when they partied with him at the nightclub after the fight. Okay, that makes sense. If you still running a game on him, you don't let the cat out the bag that you know what's what. When Margarito Flores lost money at the gambling tables, Rodriguez was only too happy to lend him a big wad of cash, of course. It all comes crashing down. And that, for a few years, was that. If the kidnapping was not forgotten, it became a footnote, just one in a series of wild escapes that would mark a dizzy 5-year spell of excess for Rodriguez and the Flores twins. By the time they were federally indicted in Milwaukee in 2005, the twins had already fled to Mexico. They grew their empire in exile, gaining in stature after they enjoyed personal audiences with the boss of the powerful Sinaloa cartel, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman himself. Flown into meetings at El Chapo's secret mountaintop lair, the twins secured the rights to distribute cocaine by the ton through Chicago. Back in Chicago, Rodriguez was still playing a lower level game. His crew eventually ripped off at least 29 other dealers. So they were just running with impunity, just snatching everybody up, doing whatever they wanted to do. In one particularly ruthless turn, a cartel hired Rodriguez to investigate a robbery, not knowing Rodriguez had done it himself. Rodriguez happily found an innocent suspect to torture. This guy will steal shit and then help you look for it, and then put one of his guys in front of you to be the one that he said took it, and then smoke him for you. Rodriguez wasn't finished with the Flores twins either. While they were in hiding in Mexico, he kidnapped their top courier and stole $4 million more. When Rodriguez's crew members found hidden loot at a Flores stash house, they shouted bingo. Then it all came crashing down. Rodriguez's crew was busted in the Drug Enforcement Administration sting when they were robbing a Joliet area warehouse that Rodriguez believed was loaded with the twins' drugs, sources say. The Flores twins' run came to an end when they found themselves caught in the middle of a deadly cartel war between El Chapo and rival boss they'd also dealt with. So they must have got him. So in the end, they got him. There's a whole cooperation chain of events right here. Oh shit! Damn! Wow. So they got him. They got their revenge in the end. Calculating to the end and at the height of their power, the twins made a business decision to turn themselves into taking the monumental decision to become the biggest drug snitches in U.S. history. The twins had much to offer. They risked their lives recording cartel leaders in incriminating conversations, and they tapped El Chapo in a phone call that tied him to a heroin deal on Chicago's west side. Dozens of indictments flowed from their cooperation. The feds rewarded them with a blockbuster deal. Their family was placed in witness protection, and the twins, who were sentenced to just 14 years in prison, will likely be free by the time they are 41 years old and may have millions of dollars in hidden drug money waiting. Everyone in the city thinks you have money, the judge who sentenced them acknowledged. Rodriguez, by contrast, had little to give. He too cut a deal with prosecutors, but all he could offer was his testimony against Lewellyn, his daddy. He snitched on his daddy, the corrupt cop, and a handful of lesser dealers. So following his capture, he tried one last trick. Incarcerated at downtown Metropolitan Correctional Center in 2008, he managed to get himself appointed as an orderly in the segregated housing unit. Inside the unit, held in solitary confinement, was one of the cartel bosses the Flores twins had secretly recorded. The boss, Vicente Zambada Niebla, the playboy son of El Chapo's second-in-command, wanted the twins dead and was prepared to pay for information. Rodriguez told what he knew, sharing the intel that helped his crew kidnap Pedro Flores all those years ago. So he gave them just the same information he had from when they snatched up Pete. Zambada paid Rodriguez's lawyer $6,000, but Rodriguez's involvement with the cartel chief ended up costing him far more. When the feds discovered what Rodriguez had done, they tore up his original deal and are now asking that he get 40 years behind bars on Friday. If U.S. District Judge Joan Gottschall, who's a failure and a disgrace, agrees, the Flores brothers will have prevailed, even though they had endured blow after blow from Rodriguez. As any Vegas eye maker can tell you, there's only one winner in a fight between a brawler and a boxer with a plan. Jesus Christ. Mind you, this is just one caveat of this fucking story. There's so many different wrinkles, and this is a film in itself. The relationship between Saul and the twins and the cops and all of this shit, that's one movie by itself. That's not even the Flores twins story. That has nothing to do with, 99.9% of the other shit that they get into throughout their life and throughout their stories. Bananas.